Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 35. I'm Mark.
I am Luke.
I'm Jill.
He's still Jill, everyone.
And Paul McCartney is dead. According to the myth, he was killed in a car accident in 1966 at the height of the Beatles' popularity at the age of 24 and was replaced by a lookalike who not only bore an uncanny physical resemblance to the dead star, but also shared his incredible musical talent. Supposed clues confirming the theory are scattered throughout the corpus of the Beatles' work, from the covers of the Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band albums, to subtle hints in lyrics to the songs She's Leaving Home and A Day in the Life. Despite John Lennon's 1970 confession to Rolling Stone that the whole thing was indeed made up, this particular conspiracy theory still managed to persist to present day, although admittedly only a tiny fringe tend to accept it now. But why would anyone believe it in the first place? Well, according to Michael Shermer's article in Scientific American, quote, "This was a fine example of the brain as a pattern recognition machine that all too often finds non-existent signals in the background noise of life," end quote. As we've often discussed in the past, the brain is very good at finding patterns, but sometimes that evolutionary trait misfires and finds patterns where there are none. Consider, for example, the infamous face on Mars, or the innumerable faces of Jesus or the Virgin Mary in truck stop grilled cheese sandwiches that later find themselves on eBay. After careful inspection, none of these things turn out to be real, with the exception of eBay. As far as we know, the events depicted in this conspiracy theory, called simply Paul is Dead, never happened. John Lennon admitted as much nearly 50 years ago, so we can confidently assure our listeners that Paul is almost certainly still alive. But let's talk about it anyway.
Yeah, what you were saying about the pattern recognition is definitely on point for this going down the rabbit hole of this whole Paul is Dead conspiracy was pretty fun, but a big chunk of the stuff that is meant to confirm or be evidence of his being dead is actually the stuff about playing records backwards and then making some of what you hear sound like an English word, but it's clear that it's equally gibberish being played normally, which is like some reverse recorded stuff. And you could probably do the same kind of ascribing some sort of English sounding stuff to the reverse stuff. So I don't know, like a lot of these things like playing Number 9 backwards, mm-hmm. the tune off the White Album there. That's the White Album, I think. Yeah. Eh? So on the White Album here, the recording go Number 9, Number 9, Number 9, and if you play it backwards, people think that they hear "Turn me on, dead man. Turn me on, dead man. Oh, yeah. Turn me on, dead man."
Right.
I don't know if they hear it in that Kermit the Frog voice. But,
My favorite was
well, I was kind of imitating the cadence there or whatever.
My favorite in terms of backwards masking was always Another One Bites the Dust. When you listen to it, it sounds backwards. It sounds like I love marijuana. I love marijuana. Which is pretty good. But also, I've seen, and I believe it was put out by a Christian organization, and it was in the Elmer Library. I found they had recorded the lyrics and put out. There was a tape you could rent, mm-hmm. and you could go through all of the Eagles' Hotel California backwards, and they had the entire song written out. In like with satanic references and stuff like that. It was awesome. It was so good.
Yeah.
And you would struggle. You would listen to it, and some of it would work, and some of it would be like, "Whoa, okay, yeah, I'm hearing something here. You know, that does sound like a word there." But the rest, man, holy bullshit.
Yeah, Michael Shermer in that same article I quoted earlier, he calls this thing the "turn me on, dead man" phenomenon. Like, and he gives the example of EVP as another version of it. You know, where eventually you'll find some type of signal if you just look hard enough, whether or not it's actually there.
I think we talked about that a little bit in our haunted house episode.
That was fun.
Yeah, our ghost hunting episode.
But yeah, like the brain evolved to find patterns in things, and you know, like I said, sometimes it misfires, and you see patterns where there are none, and
Or so the misfire is that the pattern has meaning. There may very well be a pattern there, but to attribute meaning to it is the thing that we're making up. Like,
right, yeah.
The patterns are there that make it look like a face, but we're making it look like a face with our minds.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pareidolia.
Yeah. So maybe we could explore or do a little bit of exposition of this whole theory.
Yeah, because
and actually talk about the facts of it.
Prior to, I guess, Research Week, when we were looking up stuff for this episode, I'd never even heard of this thing. Like, I didn't know about the Paul is dead conspiracy theory. I had no idea this was a thing or that people believed that he'd been replaced by some kind of... Like, let's think about how astonishing it would be if this were true. Like, the guy had to have looked like Paul McCartney, spot on, right? And needed to have that same level of technical ability.
Okay. So let's. I've got a little bit of a summary of the facts of the whole thing here.
Quote unquote facts.
Quote unquote facts. Right. Okay. So Paul McCartney is supposed to have had a car accident on November 9th of 1966, and after this car accident, there are photos of Paul McCartney. With like a cut in his lip, and you see in photos thereafter forever that he's got a scar actually on his lip there, which comes from this car accident. But the theory goes that he actually died in the car accident in '66, and that the record company execs or whatever replaced him with a bunch of different people.
So it wasn't just one dude.
At least. So some of the theory, I think there's theories that he was replaced by one of each of these different people, but some other theories are saying that basically they had a team of people rotating, being him.
Okay,
so that he could travel around easier and stuff like that.
The amount of administration that would have to go into that just to keep it quiet, like amongst all the different Paul doppelgangers.
Yeah.
Like, that how do you even come up with that?
Yeah, that's again that problem that we talked about with the other conspiracy theories about like too many people being involved just opens up, like kind of exponentially opens up more and more opportunities for leaking the whole theory. So anyway, one of the people who's supposed to have replaced him is a guy named William Campbell, who had won a lookalike contest not too long before in England. Another guy is somebody named Billy Shears, or also William Shepard, and who's referred to with the whole Sgt. Pepper's band album. Another one is this guy named Phil Ackrell from a band called the Diplomats Band, and apparently EMI has like recordings of the Diplomats Band, but you can't actually access any of these recordings. Like, you won't find any Diplomats Band, even though they actually had put out records and stuff. And I think some people suggest Denny Lane, who is a guitarist who actually ended up, oddly enough, like playing with Paul McCartney on some future stuff, like with Wings and stuff, I think.
Wings.
Yeah, so anyway, each of these... what, you don't like Wings? Oh, come on, you're such a snob.
I like the James Bond theme song a lot. I'm not so familiar with the rest of it, though, really.
I don't know. I've gone on some Wings kicks before.
It's not. Never mind. That was going to be a stupid question. Wings is definitely not still on the air.
On the air? No.
You're talking the show.
Yeah, I'm talking the show.
Oh yeah, the show. No, I think it went off the air in like '93 or something.
93? Oh.
Like, I think it's like the first half of the '90s is when it stopped. I think. Yeah.
No, it couldn't. No, it was on longer than that.
You think?
I don't know.
When was that wine movie there? Sideways.
Sideways? That was like early 2000s.
Early 2000s, and so I think
Hayden,
there was like
Hayden
a
Church.
Yeah, Hayden Church, is that it?
Something Church, something Hayden.
Yeah.
Hayden something Church.
Yeah. Hayden Christensen Church?
Church Haydenson.
Church Christensen?
Haydenson.
Church Haydenson?
Anywho.
Anyway, so I think there was a longer kind of gap, at least in my mind, between...
Are you still talking about Wings? Or
yeah, I'm still talking about it, sorry. How did we get on that?
Yeah, nothing ever happened with the girl from Wings. Eh? Like, her hair must have taken over or something like that.
We could do a whole show on Wings. But for now...
No, that'll have to be after our Who's the Boss episode.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, you were saying about Paul...
Okay, so
Pauls.
all these different people are supposed to have had major plastic surgery, reconstructive surgery to make them look like Paul McCartney.
Oh, yes, because the technology, like face-off technology,
And
John
so-
Travolta, you know.
Yeah.
we can do anything with face.
Exactly, especially-
we can't get people looking normal
No.
in Hollywood or
But we
anything
can
like
make
that.
them
with
look
all
like
over
Paul
the world.
McCartney.
But we can
Back
make
in
people look like Paul
'66,
McCartney.
we could make these guys look
Yeah,
identical.
no, that makes a lot of
Exactly
sense.
like Paul McCartney.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So this was supposedly so that they didn't have to like lose revenue from no longer having any future Beatles records coming out and stuff like that. They just wanted to keep the money rolling in. So
Okay, let's talk about
instead of just admitting that he died, they decided, oh no, let's plug in these lookalikes.
We have to talk about that leap in logic for a second, because like what can you understand that leap? Like, okay, so Paul's dead, the Beatles are immediately doomed, they won't put out another album, so we have to replace him with a lookalike.
Yeah.
Can I
Go ahead.
I would like to address the idea that in that time, in the studio, the musicians that you think are playing the music aren't actually playing the music. Like, when we're listening to the Beatles albums, that's not necessarily the Beatles playing that music.
Yeah.
Like, for example, My Guitar Gently Weeps is not George Harrison playing the guitar, that's Eric Clapton. And we don't know that.
Well, you do.
Wait, no. Didn't Eric Clapton just cover?
No,
While My Guitar
no, that's
Gently
him
Weeps?
playing the guitar solos in My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would they bother
Just
with
like
that when
when you're
George
listening-
Harrison is an amazing guitar player to begin with?
Is
Because
he?
George
We don't know
Harrison
that.
died, and they replaced him with someone who couldn't
Replace
play the
him with Paul
guitar.
McCartney, who was replaced by Billy Shears.
What I'm saying is the people that you think are playing the music aren't necessarily playing the music. When we're
Right.
listening to the Beatles, it's not necessarily the Beatles playing that, because that's the way music was recorded back then in the studios. They
Well,
would
you
just hire
needed
other
session
musicians.
musicians to make that big sound and stuff. But now I guess with computers, you just have the main artist, and you
I
can
think
just layer.
they're still dealing with studio musicians, but yeah, in terms of
Maybe.
the technology and stuff, you can just manipulate everything. You don't
Yeah.
even have to be playing it at all. You can
You
just
don't
load it all
need-
into a machine and it'll pump it out for you. You know, Taylor
Yeah.
Swift.
Yeah,
That's not
yeah,
a real
yeah.
person. But anyways, when we're listening to the music, there's even in interviews, you will hear they will ask Ringo Starr, how do you feel? Like, do you think you're maybe one of the greatest drummers in the world, and how does that feel? And he will even say, I'm not even the best drummer in this band. And he's referring to Paul McCartney, who would supposedly play the drum part after Ringo. They would send Ringo home, and Paul McCartney would jump on drums and lay down the track.
You're kidding.
No, like, this is the way.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the Beatles aren't even the Beatles when we're listening to the Beatles.
Well,
it could be anyone playing this music.
What you're talking about, actually, it could mean that he's not necessarily even talking about Paul. He just means in this band there are like 5 other drummers that we rotate in all the time on different tracks.
Yeah.
You know, or
Unless we're on tour, then you have to see us play live. But,
yeah.
But like okay, the leap in logic that I was trying to get at, you know, why assume if he did die, first of all, which didn't happen, but if he had died, why would someone assume A, they wouldn't put out any further albums, and then go to B and say, in that case, we need to replace him with someone who looks exactly like him, rather than just replacing him with someone else who could
just have a new band member and have the band go on with the...
Here's our newest Beatle, and then that would have been the end of it, but... No.
Well, you want to keep things going the way that it's succeeding, kind of thing,
like,
right?
why though? Like,
Because that's just more money to keep things going.
That's
in
the
a way.
assumption I'm trying to bust.
So your assumption, or the assumption that you're representing with that is that there's like a mitigation of risk. They think that they're guaranteed more income if they fake that he's still alive.
Right. Because it's the original
because
Beatles.
they'll continue making the same amount of money as they were before, and they'll just continue on
Like
their
the
popularity.
image of the Beatles, as the 4 of them, was sold and mass produced.
Yeah, but I mean, there's just as much risk in there because Well, first of all, if it's a new guy that they've got in there, then they're no longer actually... they no longer have the same creative minds creating the same music, so that whatever music that the Beatles create with this new guy might not be the right. Sure. But the music that comes out from this new Beatles with a new Paul McCartney might not be as appealing to the general public without the general public even knowing that it's no longer Paul McCartney. You know what I mean? Like, so this is supposed to have happened between the albums Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So, so
it's too bad it didn't happen before that, because I feel like before Revolver, the songs were lesser. Like Rubber Soul's fine, I don't mind it. But going back even further, I think that might have actually been the real Beatles. That stuff we don't really listen to, like the old classic rock, like Let Me Hold Your Hand, like the annoying rock shit. Maybe that's them. Yeah, so there was like Help stuff. and Help Me Rhonda and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. No, you're going Beach Boys, I think, there with Help Me Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's Beach Boys.
That's Beach Boys.
Yeah, sorry, I meant Help. I just meant Help. Yeah.
And the Beach Boys, for example, aren't the Beach Boys. That's just the Brian Wilson guy. That's just him and a bunch of studio musicians.
But isn't at least one of the other band members his brother?
Who stands in for like the live performances or something like that. I don't know if they're singing on the actual albums or not. It could be a bunch of studio musicians. Yeah. Practicing.
Okay, so just looking at this from another angle, the amount of time that, let's suppose he had been replaced. So the amount of time that new Paul McCartney has been doing shit with the Beatles now outweighs the amount of time original Paul McCartney would have. So might as well just call this new guy Paul McCartney and just get it over with.
Well, sure, it doesn't matter in a sense.
Yeah, I guess you're right. If the replacements are actually some of these session musicians that you're talking about that have actually been with the Beatles since the beginning, then there actually isn't that...
there isn't a change.
Over, like I was.
And if you'll notice, the later the Beatles went on, the less they could even play their albums live. They played that bit on the rooftop, and then they're like, okay, that's it, we're disbanding because we can't even play these songs anymore.
This is another thing. At that time, I think, didn't they play their last concert in San Francisco in like '66? So like the rest of their career throughout the end of the '60s. They weren't doing live shows anymore.
No, because it's not really them. They were never actually the Beatles playing all this stuff that we know now. Like, they couldn't play that. They couldn't play their own tunes.
Of course they could.
No, they couldn't.
It's ridiculous. Individually, they continued to play stuff when they did their solo careers.
Yeah, but was it those tunes that we all love in the Beatles, like Abbey Road? Like we saw them play some stuff from Abbey Road, but really we don't know if that's them.
Yeah. Okay, let's go through some of the supposed evidence backing up this.
Wait. First, I think we gotta.
we're not done with the exposition.
We have to continue with the exposition of the whole thing.
Let's keep with the exposition, then we'll go through the different pieces of evidence.
Yes. So just to wrap up that. So it's not until like 3 years later in '69 that anybody even proposes this theory that Paul is dead. So in '69, there's this guy named Tim Harper who writes for a college paper. In September of that year, he writes about this story about Paul being dead and all of these clues that have been left and stuff like that. Then someone named Tim, I think, calls into a radio station to talk about the theory. So it goes out on the radio. Then there's another college paper that picks it up, and then another radio station that picks it up until very shortly right after, also Life magazine catches wind of it. And so they go to Paul McCartney's farm in Scotland, where Paul McCartney is kind of retreated in '69 because I think he's already kind of done with the Beatles. I'm not even sure. Has he already publicly declared that he's quitting the Beatles at that time? I think he might have. Anyway, so they go out to his farm where he's now living with Linda McCartney and their two little toddlers. And
no farm animals because they don't eat animals, I guess. So they're vegetables. They're growing vegetable farmers.
Hey, I wonder. I don't know. I don't know if they were vegetarians at that time or if that kind of developed. Anyway, so at first he just wants to kick the Life. Yeah, it's Life magazine, not Time magazine. He just wants to kick them off his property, and
Sorry, I just pulled a giant hair out of my mouth.
Great.
Anyways, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so at first he just wants to kick them out, and apparently he like douses them with a bucket of water and stuff like that. But then he realizes that he probably should cajole them or whatever, and just give them some comments and stuff. So he agrees actually to be interviewed and have like a photo taken of him and his family, and that actually becomes like the cover of Life magazine for that month.
Okay.
And in there they ask him about the whole thing, about the whole Paul is dead thing, and that's where he kind of famously paraphrases Mark Twain's quote of the rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
You've been practicing that accent.
I've been building up to that one line.
Wait, do it again.
The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a famous quote that people attribute to Paul McCartney. But he was actually quoting Mark Twain, and apparently that's actually even a misquote of Mark Twain. Anyway, so it's after the Life magazine story comes out that it becomes like a big story, and all the fans start looking into it, and that's when they start pulling out all this stuff from the album artwork and the songs and playing things backwards and all this stuff.
Right.
Because in those radio shows they actually did some of the playing the record backward and hearing like "Turn Me On, Dead Man" and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's the exposition.
All right. So let's look at some of the supposed evidence backing this up, and we'll start with the Abbey Road album cover. Right,
Abbey Road, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So according to the conspiracy theory, like the way that they're walking across the crosswalk here is supposed to represent a funeral procession.
Yeah.
Right. How's this go?
So what? 4 people crossing a road is a funeral procession?
No. So the thing is that John Lennon, he's in a white suit, and he's supposed to head. And he's got his long hair and everything by this time.
He's supposed to be the preacher, right?
Exactly.
And then behind
next
him,
in line,
the Undertaker, right?
Yeah, which is Ringo Starr, all dressed in black. Mm-hmm. He's supposed to be the Undertaker.
And then you have, is it Paul that comes
Paul
next?
is coming next.
Representing the dead.
Okay.
And he represents the dead because he's the one in the picture.
Not wearing any shoes.
Yeah, he's barefoot,
the one with no
walking
shoes.
Walking across the street. He's the one that's barefoot. Okay. And apparently the English actually buried their dead.
With no shoes?
With no shoes.
That's an English thing?
Yeah, apparently it's an English cultural thing. I hadn't heard of that, but
and then George Harrison coming last,
and he's decked out in the Canadian tuxedo. Actually, he's double deniming it. I think.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So
that's a Canadian tuxedo.
He's supposed to be the gravedigger because he's in this work outfit.
Oh,
right?
I see.
Yeah, the gravedigger.
And they also say that that you can see Paul McCartney holding a cigarette in his right hand, but oh my God, he's left-handed, so can't possibly be him. I don't why is that a thing? Why does that?
Well, wouldn't you carry your cigarette in the opposite hand that you're doing shit with?
But beyond that, they're crossing the street and the camera's facing their right side. So
yeah,
if he's doing anything, you'd want that to be in frame in the camera. So that's Occam's razor. Just eliminate the bullshit and get straight to it, right? Like it's the easiest explanation. He's just holding something because he wants the camera to see it, possibly. That's a better explanation than he's actually left-handed, so this has got to be an imposter.
Yeah. Well, another thing too is that he's out of step. All of the other Beatles, they have like their right or left foot forward in as they're walking across, and he's got the opposite leg forward.
Yeah.
Fucking Paul.
Fucking Paul,
man.
man.
Shit together.
So he's obviously dead in this photo, or representative of the dead guy in the funeral.
Well, and there's some other clues in the photo. Apparently, on the right side in the background, there's
the license plate thing.
Well, that's on the left. There's this. There's a white Beetle actually.
Volkswagen Beetle. That's on the left side.
Yeah, and that's got like you say, the license plate says 28 if, and people think that is referring to the fact that Paul McCartney would have been 28 if
he
he
had
were
lived.
still alive
Right.
at that time. And on the right side in the background, there's a black lorry, as the Brits are wont to say.
It's a truck. It's a fucking truck.
It's a fucking truck, but they say that it's like a police hearse or something like that. So it's like some kind of death car.
So, like, Paul actually, in an interview at some point, when asked why he wasn't wearing shoes in this photo, he's like, "It was a hot day out."
There's your Occam's razor.
Yeah.
It was hot.
It was hot, so I wasn't wearing
So
shoes.
deep.
Yeah, so deep.
Like, aside from that, people, like, I think people are just attributing this 28 if thing to the license plate because it's a puzzle piece that seems to fit with the greater picture.
Well, the funny thing is that he actually would have been 27.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like,
I've heard them try to rationalize this by saying that if you count the first year before his birthday, or like if you include all the time he was in the womb, he's been in existence for 28 years.
So they do that because they say the Beatles were heavily into Eastern mysticism and that kind of thing, and according to some Eastern philosophy, that you actually count the time you're in the womb as part of your life count, right? So you would have been 28. Okay. So, yeah. But we're just reaching at that point.
Well, we're reaching for the truth.
Yes, we are.
So yeah, let's look at some other album art kind of stuff, like the Sgt. Pepper's album cover. That has like a plethora of shit to talk about.
Yeah, like the drum thing.
Right, the drum skin.
The drum skin. So if you put a mirror on
That's
it,
my favorite.
You get the phrase I1, IX, he, weird cross thing, die.
Yeah.
So the I1X is a direct reference to the supposed fatal crash on 11/9/66. He refers to Paul, as the diamond that points directly to McCartney confirms die.
Yeah. Or other interpretations are that basically you see it's not I1 IX but one written out 1X. So that would be like the three Beatles, 1 1 1, and then the fourth Beatle is actually X'd out because he's dead. I mean, I find this one actually kind of cool because it does coincidentally like really kind of line up like that. The arrow between the he die, between the words he and die, there's like this little arrow, and it does happen to line up right below Paul McCartney. And the other thing is this interesting kind of synchronicity thing of those numbers 11/9 or 9/11 kind of coming up in here again. Right?
9/11 changed everything.
Yeah, way back in 60.
9/11/66.
Yeah.
Changed. Okay, that's kind of spooky.
But the funny thing is that a lot of these conspiracy theorists, even like who are actually conspiracy theorists specifically in the Paul is dead thing, is that they mix up the date. And even though we have records showing that this is all about November 9th, they think that it's September 9th. Because in
by virtue of the way the dates are written.
Well, that's it. In America, you write your dates month, day, year, completely fucking illogical, and I hate that format. But in everywhere else in the world, you do either day, month, year, so you get the progression, right, of the timescales, or you do year, month, day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So anyway, with the British dating and stuff, it's November that he died.
Here's one of my favorites from the same album jacket. He's wearing the patch on his
Oh yeah,
the OPD patch. It means officially pronounced dead.
Yeah, in the same way that like DOA is a commonly known acronym for dead on arrival.
Yeah, the OPD patch that he's wearing was the Ontario Provincial Police
It's actually
Department
an
thing.
OPP patch that he's wearing. Yeah.
But,
Paul McCartney is down with OPP.
Yes.
He down with OPP. Yeah, we know he. Hey, did you see the way I like switch that around?
So why is he wearing an OPP jacket? That seems strange, no?
Well, I think it was just like a mishmash of
fashion statement
of kind of classical militaristic kind of stuff on their costumes on the Sergeant Pepper's thing, right? So they had the OPP patch on the shoulder. He had this like this kind of silk suit that had like the epaulettes on it and everything, and you've got like medals on his chest.
Fashion statement.
Yeah, sure. Although one of the medals that he has on his chest is a medal that you only receive
if you're dead.
If you're dead.
There you go. And does any of the others have that medal? Or
no,
is he
he's the only one that has it.
But here, I guess
another thing. Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, they could be paying homage to the rumor as well at this point. And the artist that's designed this album cover wasn't them.
Well, the problem is this is
someone else.
Well, this is Sgt. Pepper's, so this is right after 66. Like, Sgt. Pepper's comes out in 67, I think. Right. So the rumor hasn't actually come out yet.
I see.
He's supposed to have died at the end of 66, and so the next album that came out after that was Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, so
but the rumor actually didn't start circulating until fall of 69.
I see.
Yeah, so there's also another picture of the four of them in that album cover, and Paul is the only one turning his back to the camera in that photo.
Yeah.
So that's another allusion to him being dead, apparently.
And in another photo, he's the only one with his legs drawn up Indian style, like sitting Indian style, while all the others they're just next to him, and you don't see their legs. Right. So people say that like he's basically kind of womb-like and curled up like in a fetal kind of
death position. Cross-legged death position. Gotcha.
Sure. Again, in that same one, George Harrison's thumb is pointing to the opening lines of "She's Leaving Home," and the lyrics say, "Wednesday morning at 5:00 as the day begins."
Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock as the day begins.
So they're saying that's another reference to the day and time of Paul's fatal car accident.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Yeah, November 9th at 5 a.m. on a Wednesday is when he's supposed to have had the fatal accident. So also, in the image, there's like two sets of Beatles there. There's the ones in like the pseudo-militaristic silks, colorful suits, just behind the flower arrangement at the bottom that says Beatles. And to the right of them, there's the Beatles in like their older style, where they're wearing like the mod kind of black suit and tie kind of get up. So John and George, they're smiling in the photo, but Ringo and Paul, they're looking down at the flower arrangement. And Paul seems to be kind of consoling Ringo because his hand is on his shoulder and Ringo's head is kind of bowed. And that flower arrangement on the cover is supposed to be a grave. And next to the grave, there's another smaller flower arrangement that's in the shape of a left-handed bass guitar. If you kind of turn the image, it could be seen as like the letter P for Paul.
The guitar?
The bass guitar, yeah.
All right.
There's another clue in the Magical Mystery Tour where he's wearing a black flower. The others are all wearing red.
Yeah.
The explanation here is really simple. They ran out of red ones.
They ran out of red ones.
So Paul took the black one.
Yeah, that's all that happened.
But I mean, they respond that like, how common are black roses? They're really rare.
So
I mean, yeah. Actually, so that's how, but what we've been leading to there also is that there is kind of like a lot of coincidental singling out of Paul in a lot of the imagery, right?
I think at one point they just started kind of fueling this because they thought it was kind of funny. I mean,
maybe.
Well, he's
I
singled
think
out-
at the same time they didn't think it was funny. They thought it was really annoying that every time they did an interview, that's all that people would start to talk to them about.
right.
But like, and like at the time, another one of these coincidences is on the cover of Let It Be. There's like the 4 individual pictures of like headshots of them on Let It Be. It's got a black main background, and they'll say that's significant. But also within the individual photos behind their heads, it's like a white background for all of the Beatles except for Paul, who's got red as his background.
See, okay, there's an article here that I was looking at livescience.com, and they're saying this happened really closely to, well, around the same time as the Charles Manson murders, right? And like the reasoning behind those murders was because Manson found all these hidden meanings in songs played backwards and that kind of stuff.
Particularly Helter Skelter.
Right, exactly. So according to, I'm just going to quote from the article, according to Gary Patterson, author of the well-researched The Walrus Was Paul, perhaps the Beatles became concerned that if they admitted to planting clues, they could very well be charged in some sort of conspiracy that would indirectly link them to the Manson murders. Perhaps it would be much safer to give up the hoax and deny it ever happened. This way, the Beatles would be safe from any lawsuit implicating the band members. And perhaps in a lighter vein, however, the rumor also helped to further boost the sale of the Beatles' catalog and inspired a lot of cartoons and comedy skits like the one that was presented on The Ed Sullivan Show in February of 1970, involving 2 angels in heaven. The first angel, is there any truth to the rumor that Paul McCartney is still alive? Angel 2, I doubt it. Where do you think we get those groovy harp arrangements? So yeah, like I think that kind of touches on some really important points. You know, they wanted plausible deniability, right? They didn't want to be linked to what was happening at that time, and you know, but for some reason, people kept glomming on to this conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney was actually dead. And if you look at all these things, all these clues,
there just seems to be like an infinite amount of material there that you can that you can easily make something that's sort of compelling out of. You know, like all of these different songs where they play stuff backwards. You know, you've got the number 9 thing. In Strawberry Fields at the end, you hear this kind of garbled speech that sounds like
I buried Paul.
I buried Paul, but what it actually is, like, if you what John Lennon himself has said it was that he was just saying cranberry sauce.
Even more meaningful.
In on the White Album, there's the tune "I'm So Tired," and if you play it backwards, you hear "Paul is dead now, miss him, miss him, miss him."
Miss him, miss him, miss him.
Yeah.
But this again, it goes back to the EVP thing. Like you can, if you want to hear something enough, and if you listen intently enough, you might be able to come up with what you think sounds like what you want to hear.
You arrange it into a familiar pattern, right?
Yeah. It's the same with EVP. It's the same with listening to stuff backwards. Yeah, it's pareidolia. It's audible, auditory pareidolia. I think. Let's call it that. Auditory,
oral.
Sure.
What's this pareidolia word or whatever?
It's finding patterns where there are none.
Yeah, but specifically pareidolia
Faces
is about like finding
and
faces in random.
Okay.
Random
Well, it
image
does seem
patterns.
to be it's a specific part of the brain that identifies faces.
I think so, yeah.
Because I'm thinking of what's that sax guy, the guy from Awakenings that Robin Williams plays, that doctor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He has. I remember reading one of his books, and it was talking about a man that was unable to identify faces.
Yeah, this face blindness thing.
Yeah, he has face blindness because it is a specific part of the brain.
Right. He had some kind of neurological damage or something.
If it's damaged, you basically can't see people's faces, I guess. And he would identify his wife by the hat that she wore.
Yeah,
that was
isn't
the
that
only way
up?
that he would know that was his wife.
That's so weird.
So weird. You can go face blind.
But it's very strange, though, that it's a particular part of the brain that just identifies faces.
Right.
That blows me away.
What's weird is that like why would your brain actually make that hard difference between the shapes and colors that comprise a face versus the shapes and colors that comprise the items I see on the table in front of me?
I'm just talking out my ass.
Why wouldn't I just say I can see 2 dark dots and you know, like a
It's got to be evolutionary, like the ability to recognize someone of the same species or someone of the same genus or whatever, as opposed to just a random pattern.
In terms of facial recognition, it's you're identifying enemy, foe, foe and not foe, I guess, would it be? Or I don't know where it would
Friend
be.
or foe thing?
Like I'm thinking evolutionary wise, why would that be a necessary thing?
Yeah. It's better to get some false positives than it is to get a false negative, because a false negative means the lion is jumping out of the grass and is eating you, whereas the false positive, where you think that the wind shuffling the grass is a lion, gets you out of there, right?
Yeah. Evolutionary.
This makes me immediately think of famous people and how they're mistaken for other famous people. And when they ask, who do you think I am?
Yeah, that's funny.
Really?
Eh?
And they look nothing like them,
Right.
Absolutely nothing like them. Like, you think I'm Bill Murray. I look nothing like Bill Murray. Well, there was one that I saw recently on a nighttime talk show. And it's the guy from that Beatles movie, which is kind of funny. But, the singing Beatles movie, what's it called? Across the Universe?
Yeah, Across the
Universe.
Universe.
So that young guy.
that guy that kind of looks like Paul McCartney, actually.
So someone approaches him and goes, "You're famous. Are you Jeff Bridges?" And he's going like, he's 7 years old. What are you talking about? How is that possible? But you're famous though? Yeah, but you're not Jeff Bridges? And the guy just kind of walked away. I'm not
asking
who he actually was.
You actually?
Just are you Jeff Bridges? No. All right, moving along then.
That's really funny.
But what the fuck? He didn't look like Jeff Bridges at all. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's not a facial pattern. That's drawing some other conclusion there with other brain faculty. That's not facial recognition.
No. Yeah.
I don't know what pattern.
Well,
that is.
it's some kind of like there's like an easy heuristic, I guess, where we categorize people into groups. So we have like a famous people group in our brain, and then we have an acquaintances group in our brain, and then we have familiar faces that we might have just seen around town kind of group.
Like put all the TV faces here.
Yeah,
in this.
exactly.
Okay.
And then so within each of those groups, if you don't know those kind of categories might serve some kind of use for I don't know what the use is, but within each of those categories, it might be like harder work to actually correctly label each of the members of the group.
Right.
So you could see some kind of half-assed kind of jumbling of the names in there, maybe. I don't know.
That doctor's name is Oliver Sacks. That's
Oliver
guy's name
Sacks,
is. Yeah.
right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, is there any... let's just, for the... I don't know why I want to entertain this conspiracy theory, but is there any possibility it might be plausible?
I will quote Walter from Fringe.
Okay.
And say that anything is possible.
Okay,
Santa Claus could be real.
I hate that anything is possible thing, because no, anything is not possible. There's one really good example of like you have a bag, and I wish this was a visual show because I could demonstrate this a lot easier.
All right, everyone, Mark has a bag.
I have a little satchel. Let's call it a satchel.
What's the satchel?
Right?
What are the dimensions of the satchel in centimeters, please?
Let's say it's about a 10 centimeter high satchel.
Okay, so like a large scrotum.
10
Sure.
centimeter high and 10 meters wide.
No, not 10 meters wide. It's a little satchel that I can hold in
You
my
have
hand.
a massive scrotum, everyone.
And I have a die in my hand. Okay. So I say, is there a possibility that if I put this die in this bag, there could be an infinite number of dice in this bag, but if I put this one in here, is it possible that I could roll, let's say, an 18?
From this one die?
There could be other dice in the bag. Okay. So if I put the one in here and then I dump out the contents, is it possible that I can roll an 18?
Yes.
No, because what ends up happening is there was nothing else in the bag, and it's just the one die, right?
I
wish
we don't know that though.
No, but you just said it's possible there were...
We do know that because as I dump it out, there's only the one. And that's why I wish this was a visual demonstration, because it's a lot more impactful, but the reality was there was only ever one die. Right. So no, it was never possible that you can roll an 18 because I only put the one thing in the bag. At no point was it possible to say that I could have rolled an 18.
This sounds like a bit of sophistry, though, because with the if the question is about us having, with the information that we have, the possibilities that we have to consider as possible, then not knowing whether or not there are other dice in the bag, we have to admit that yes, it is possible.
No. What you have to admit is I do not know.
Sure. But
Right.
in that not knowing, it presents the possibility.
No. In that not knowing, that is the only conclusion you can draw from this situation.
Right.
From this example is you
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
I feel like it's a
But the
a
question
language
is-
difference about how you're applying the term possible.
Right.
Right. So
We have to-
there's possible in terms of the absolute definitive sense of what is and is not possible at any given time in the universe, but then there's the sense of an observer having to account for what logically they have to eliminate or what logically they are not able to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, if you're not able to eliminate it by synonym, that just means it's possible.
But the point of this entire demonstration is you cannot pronounce possibility on a given situation unless you have all the information related to it. Right?
Well, sure.
Right. Yeah.
Which
But that's more probability too, isn't it?
There's probability and there's exactly like there's is it possible and is it probable?
Yeah.
Right.
It reminds me of that white swan versus black swan. Who is that? Is that Rousseau or I can't remember who that was. No, it was further back than that. You know what I'm talking about?
The black swan fallacy.
Berkeley, maybe.
Okay.
The whole like logically, all swans are white, but it is possible that there may exist a black swan, but we just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Is that Berkeley? Is that?
I can't remember.
You know what I'm talking about? Then?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
How did you bring this up with the anything is possible thing? You said something about anything being possible, and I just lost.
So we were trying to
Oh yeah, is it possible?
Is the theory possible?
Right. Yeah, and that's where I lost my mind on this anything is possible bullshit.
Yeah. I get you though. I feel you on that one. I've never liked the platitude that anything is possible.
Right, because anything, quote unquote, anything is not possible. There are certain limitations to things that are possible within our universe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just
Sure.
That's just the way it works. Sorry. So I don't. To me, in terms of this conspiracy theory, just like with any other conspiracy theory, the evidence does not support the claim.
Meanwhile, I'm going with the Beatles were never actually the Beatles. When you're seeing them play live when they were the Beatles back in the day, you can't actually hear them. All you're hearing is the roar of the crowd. We don't even know if their instruments are plugged in.
They could just be standing there for all we know.
Well, one other piece of information here is that the first guy who wrote the article in the college paper, that Tim Harper guy, he had actually stated at some point eventually that he completely made everything up, whole cloth, because he was able to find this fun stuff that he could like ascribe meaning to, like with the album covers and the songs played backwards and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, so we've got like the first source of it claiming himself that it was all made up, and for some reason when I read that part, it made me think about the whole Trump time traveling thing, and how like we saw on 4chan people making up this theory about a Trump time traveler, but also coming up with a bunch of like interesting kind of like viscerally compelling coincidences and things, you know, like in the book, the line about like the protesters gathering outside the Fifth Avenue hotel protesting the election of the president, and all these little things that you can pull out of the book and say have some kind of relation with the situation we know now with Trump. And like we even said in that time traveling Trump episode that we could probably construct a whole new theory with Bernie Sanders, right? Remember when we challenged?
So which episode is this? We're quoting our previous episode. Which episode is that? Do you remember the number? The time travel Trump one.
That was around
if anyone
20.
ever wants to go back and listen to a previous episode, it's episode number.
It was around 20, I think.
Around
It's
20.
in the 20s.
Look through our 20s.
Yeah.
There's some good ones, some gold.
Yeah.
I'm going with Paul McCartney is actually Trump. Who
Paul
traveled back
McCartney is Trump.
in time. So now there's actually multiple versions of Trump. And
I think in
Paul
one of them
McCartney
is
is
Paul McCartney.
Baron Trump.
Baron Trump.
Yeah.
I think during the same time
Who
traveling
is
Trump
Trump?
episode, we said we wanted to create our own conspiracy theory
Yeah.
and just make it stick, see if we can, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I'm still totally down for doing that. Like, I want to find some obscure topic and just craft a conspiracy theory around it using random bullshit that we find and see if it becomes a thing, because like that's what this just feels like. It's people are finding little elements and trying to pigeonhole them into the greater picture.
Well, there's like confirmation bias, right, that plays into there
Yeah.
too. You know, you just find things that you can kind of shoehorn into your preconceived model, right?
It's also a Texas sharpshooter thing, right? You just paint the target around where the arrow falls and say, "Hey, look, this is like I was right. You see all the evidence that I found around it."
Yeah.
Where in reality, you just shot somewhere and then put all this stuff around it to make it look like you hit the target in the first place.
Yeah, throwing shit on a wall and seeing what sticks, pretty much, right?
Yeah, like the evidence does not in any way support this theory. Once you crack down and just look at the admissions from like John Lennon and everybody else, they're like, "Well, no, sorry."
Yeah, but they've even said, but hold on, we're not even playing the music.
Yeah.
Like, and no one listened to that shit. Like, no one's really paying attention or
one's paying
understanding what they're talking about.
Yeah,
we don't necessarily
there's the
know.
fact that no one's paying attention, also the fact that people are really, really dead set on believing this, regardless of the evidence pointed against it, right? People like their little private realities, regardless
Well,
of
another
what-
thing that occurred to me was that this happens like in the pre-internet era. Like you don't have 1,000,001 things to distract yourself with. So like all you've got in terms of fun stuff are those like 5 album covers sitting in front of you on your bedroom floor, and that's all you got to play with.
You're right. I'm thinking of something like the mystique of Kiss when they used to have their makeup on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't be able to do that now. Like, we would just be going, here's a picture of Gene Simmons without any makeup on, like, fucking this girl in the sleazy motel kind of thing. Like,
Well, I don't
and that
think-
would be online.
I don't think it's that you couldn't do it now, but it's
What I'm saying is you could... Oh, right. Okay,
it's that it's more likely that you can make something out of very little back then, right? Because
there was less.
Because that's all there is. So you can scrutinize every little detail,
Right.
And they didn't
and
have
you're less likely to be distracted. by
suppose
it.
there wasn't the overabundance of information
Yeah.
to wade through either. It's like you have this set of information and you pull from that almost exclusively because that's the entire universe of your information, right? So if you start finding patterns within it, then it seems more likely that the theory you've constructed around those pieces of evidence would make more sense, just because there's nothing else influencing your decision-making process at that point, right? You don't have all that, like I said, all that other information to contradict it and to debunk your own conspiracy theory. You just have this set of stuff, and now look, it looks real. Right?
Yeah.
Mystique sells.
Despite denial to the contrary.
And to sort of extend from what you had started saying, there are other conspiracy theories just like this one that are coming up even in this day and age. There's one about Avril Lavigne too.
Oh yeah, she was replaced by a doppelganger.
That
or
she
something.
was also replaced by.
Well,
Because
that
she
would be
doesn't
more
look
easily
anything-
done, right? Just grab any kid, throw a guitar on them, whatever. Avril Lavigne.
She doesn't look anything like she used to look like. She grew up.
Called aging. Well, the same thing is true for Paul McCartney. Like the guy was like 20 or whatever when they became super famous, or in his early 20s. And then, as you become an adult, you get rounder, or you get thinner, or you get...
Your face melts.
Less talented. You
People
get less
change.
talented.
People change. People grow up. They get old. They start developing wrinkles and weird tics and nervousness and whatever. But Yeah. Final thoughts on Paul is dead. Paul is not dead. That's my final.
So
thought
my
there.
final thought is that the only way this Paul is dead thing might be true is that if it's actually the Illuminati that came up, the Illuminati actually came up with the whole thing to engineer society in ways that they thought were more amenable, because they didn't like that the Beatles were starting to get more kind of independent minded and starting to like protest wars.
The Beatles were amassing too much temporal power.
Yeah.
They were becoming too influential, and the Illuminati didn't want anyone infringing on their niche, right? They didn't want others to just kind of eat away at their control of the population, so they engineered this whole Paul is dead thing.
Yeah. And there are photos of the Beatles, goofing off and making like the Masonic eye thing, where they're like
same one
winking,
Lady Gaga uses,
or peering through that OK symbol with your hand.
Gaga does that.
Lady Gaga does that too.
She's Illuminatus.
She's totally Illuminati. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go on.
Is
with
that
my,
our conspiracy theory? Is that the one we're crafting now?
What? Lady Gaga is the Illuminati?
Lady Gaga is
yeah.
the Illuminati. Lady Gaga is Leonardo da Vinci.
I'll buy it. Yeah.
She's an eternal being who started up the Illuminati.
We got so much material.
There's more to come.
Luke, you're...
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sticking with the Beatles were never actually the Beatles.
Yeah.
The only one that was ever real was Ringo. And he's actually a talking train. So that's what I'm going with.
Talking.
I love it.
Very nice.
That one's totally possible.
I'm just gonna, Paul is not dead. It's just...
He was always dead. Look at him.
He's always dead.
Dead inside.
But there's it's a small fringe group, like I said in the opening of this episode, that still believes this. I think it's something like less than 5% of the population believes it or something. It's some tiny, minuscule fraction.
That's weird. I find that huge, actually. 5% of the population believes a completely ridiculous theory.
Well, there are other ridiculous theories that people believe in, but yeah, I don't know.
Angels. People believe in angels.
People believe
crystals.
Yeah.
80% of the American population believes in Christianity.
Yeah. Astrology.
Well, I believe in Christianity.
As a thing
it exists.
that exists.
It exists.
Yeah, okay.
I believe in table.
Yeah. But no, this thing has been thoroughly debunked. We didn't really spend too much time debunking it because it's been done. It's out there. Michael Shermer wrote a really excellent piece about it. We'll link to it in the description. That just tears this thing apart and explains it through the lens of psychology and why people cling to conspiracy theories in the first place. That whole sense of I have knowledge that other people don't. It's that sense of belonging. It's that sense of I'm part of an in-group that has access to information and other people don't. And this is what I know. This is what I believe, and I'm going to go to the grave believing it, regardless of the evidence to the contrary. Wow, that was kind of a pun there with the grave thing. I didn't mean to do that.
Taxman guitar solo is not George Harrison.
Shut up.
But Paul McCartney on guitar.
You're kidding.
Hey, that's a great guitar solo there, George. That wasn't me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just proves like how much
I'm
of a
telling you, the
musical
Beatles-
genius Paul McCartney was.
The Beatles aren't even the
specifically, though.
Beatles. Like,
Before
we
he
don't know
died.
who's doing what in that band.
Yeah, you don't know who's doing what.
Yeah.
But Paul McCartney is like
Why don't
he's
you go
a
home,
luminary.
Listen to the Wings again and listen to the songs that aren't Live
Yeah.
and Let Die, and tell me what you think.
I love him. Like whether you're talking about Roll It Over, where he imitates John Lennon as kind of like a I don't
Does
know,
he
like
do a
sort
good
of an
job?
olive branch song after the
Could
split
it be
of the
that John
Beatles.
Lennon never existed
Roll
and it was
it
all the Beatles was actually just Paul McCartney?
By the way, Paul McCartney, if you're listening to this episode and would like to sponsor the show, we'd love to have it.
By the way, Illuminati, if you'd like to call in and sponsor the show.
Lady Gaga?
Lady Gaga. Anyone we've mentioned throughout this entire episode, if you would like to sponsor us, more than happy to have you.
Scott Baio?
Scott
Scott
Baio.
Baio.
Tony Danza. Tony Danza.
Please don't hurt us.
Please don't hurt us. We're a small show.
Large scrotums, though. Very large scrotums.
Large scrotums, if you'd like to call in and sponsor the show.
Is the plural of scrotum scroti?
The Loomis Roadie.
Loomis Road.
All right.
So there's that. This has been Critical Junction episode 35. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.